Mr. Chancellor, Madam President, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and Carleton graduands. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce you to my friend Giselle Portenier, who is here today to receive an honorary doctorate from this university, which holds a special place in her heart. Carleton is where she graduated 3 decades ago with a Bachelor of Journalism, and then she went out and made her mark in the world, as you will do in the years ahead. Our university's new strategic plan commits Carleton to work with others to confront challenges and improve the state of the world. As a journalist who has focused on human rights issues, Giselle Portenier has honored those values throughout her professional life. She was a citizen of the world when she arrived at Carleton in the 1970s. She was born in Switzerland, lived in Sweden, South America, and the United States before coming to Canada as a teenager. By the time she arrived at Carleton, she spoke 5 languages and had a unique perspective on the world, which she shared with those of us lucky enough to be her classmates. When she first came to study here, she dreamt of a career in public relations, but Carleton's journalism program inspired her to switch tracks, and she instead set her sights on becoming an international journalist. She started modestly enough, working in local television newsrooms in London, Ontario, and then Vancouver. Before long, she headed to Britain and worked first for ABC News, then CBS News, and finally the BBC, where she produced and directed films for some of the BBC's most prestigious television news and public affairs programs for more than 20 years. From her base at the BBC, she traveled the world, making films primarily about human rights issues and attracting a lot of attention for her groundbreaking documentaries about the human rights of women and children. Long before the term honor killings was widely used, she made a film about honor killings in Pakistan. More films followed about the traumatizing effects of war on children in Congo, the unsolved murders of thousands of women in Guatemala, child slavery in the charcoal industry in Brazil, sex slavery and child prostitution in Thailand, and the list goes on. Many of her films won awards. Her film about honor killings, Murder In Purdah, won the George Foster Peabody and George Polk Awards. The Peabody is often described as TV's equivalent of the Pulitzer Prize. Her film about female infanticide in India, Let Her Die, won the Golden Nymph Award. Even more important to her is that her films made a difference. They changed attitudes, changed lives, and even at times shamed governments into changing laws. She's been more than a filmmaker too. In 2003, she moved to Cambodia for a year to head a multi-million-dollar mass media health campaign for the BBC. More recently, she volunteered with CUSO on a 6-week project in Honduras. Since retiring from the BBC, she has continued to cover stories about human rights abuses, which have been published in the Ottawa Citizen and elsewhere. She's been fearless in her effort to shine a light on some of the world's injustices, going into some very dangerous places, barely escaping alive at times, once when she was surrounded by an angry mob in northeastern Congo, and another time when the plane carrying her and her crew crashed in Zimbabwe. One of the great feature filmmakers of our time, Martin Scorsese, also made documentary films early in his career. Asked about documentary filmmaking once, he said, "The only thing you need to make a film is to not be afraid of anybody or anything." That's how Giselle Portenier has approached her filmmaking and her life. Mr. Chancellor, in recognition of a distinguished career in broadcast journalism and documentary filmmaker whose global focus on human rights, especially the human rights of women and children, is also reflected in print, I request that you confer the degree Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, upon Giselle Portenier.
By virtue of my authority vested in me by the Board of Governors and upon recommendation of the University Senate, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Mary. Mary is my very good friend from my early days at Carleton, for that generous introduction. Wow, you guys look absolutely amazing, totally amazing. Mr. Chancellor, Chair of the Board, Madam President, graduates, and honored guests, I can't tell you how delighted I am and proud to be standing here today receiving this surprising honor and to share it with all of you. First of all, congratulations to each and every one of you for your terrific achievement. When I first heard that I would have the privilege of saying a few words here today, I did what any self-respecting hack or journalist would do. I trawled the internet, of course, for facts and inspiration. I watched a few speeches and read a few more. One of my favorite bits of advice was, take naps frequently, but please don't do it during my speech today. Finally, what resonated most were words from a Carleton friend who said, gosh, nobody has life and career all figured out, but at this age we sure have learned to listen to and to trust our hearts. And so I want to jump right to the end and speak to you from my heart and to ask you to listen to yours, to trust your heart to know right from wrong, to trust your heart to give you the courage to do right, not wrong, and to trust your heart to be a force for good. You all probably think I'm standing here because of my work, but in truth, it's thanks to that famous Austrian musician, Mozart. He's to blame. Let me explain. I left Carleton with a dream of covering the big international news stories, and like many of you, I suspect, I was impatient to get started, but years and some pretty good jobs went by, but I wasn't much closer to my goal. Then I landed what seemed to be a fantastic job as a producer with the BBC in London. But again, I watched as my mostly male colleagues swanned off to witness history in unpronounceable places. I was 33, ancient by anyone's standards, but especially yours, I suppose, and desperate measures were necessary. Thankfully, by then I'd developed a rather helpful, irreverent attitude to authority. And by the way, that's an attitude I highly recommend. So when I was sent on a day trip to Vienna for an interview, I saw my chance. I discovered these fabulous chocolates called Mozart balls. They're round, about this big, and very, very tasty. So I bought a box of 2, and fortuitously they came in boxes of 2. And back in London, I snuck into my boss's office after hours. I put the box of 2 Mozart balls on his desk with a note that simply said, these are Mozart balls, and unless I get the next big foreign trip, yours will be next. Thank you, true story. A short while later, I was on a 6-week trip to India to cover their elections, and I never looked back. Lesson learned. No Mozart balls, no glory. Take note, class of 2014. I didn't actually discover my true passion until a few years later, though. It may take you some time as well, but really, it's well worth the wait. And while you're waiting, remember to open the door when opportunity knocks. It all started, in my case, with the office trash can. I saw the boss's secretary toss a document in the garbage, and I thought I'd sneak a look. What I saw was a harrowing tale of murder. It was a documentary proposal that told the story of hundreds of baby girls in India murdered every year by their own parents because India's expensive dowry system makes girls a huge financial burden. Thousands more female fetuses are aborted after sex determination tests. Millions of women are missing. My executive producer had rejected this pitch, but I managed to bully him into changing his mind in a gentle way. We discovered that the culture of the dowry is indeed deadly. In India, we tracked down mothers who showed us how they killed their own baby daughters. We filmed a doctor driving from village to village with a portable ultrasound machine, checking pregnant women's bellies, and then pronouncing, "It's just a girl." We also featured an orphanage full of abandoned girl children, the lucky ones who cheated death. Not long after our film, Let Her Die, aired in England, the Indian government banned sex determination tests. They're still going on, but it's a start. But really, the most rewarding thing happened a year later. A letter from an American couple landed on my desk with a photo of their infant daughter, Leah. It turned out they'd been inspired by our film to adopt an unwanted baby girl from an Indian orphanage. A law changed, a life changed, and for me, a realization of the power of journalism and the power of each and every human being to inspire change. And so my passion for human rights journalism was born. My work hasn't been without its critics, of course. The most controversial films were those that shone a light on human rights abuses perpetrated in the name of culture or religion. They're usually abuses of the human rights of girls and women, and often involve forms of sexual control, forced marriage, female genital mutilation, honor killings, and so on. Speaking up about these violations is controversial because these are customs that are often vigorously defended, not just by the perpetrators, not just by their communities, but often by their governments as well. Criticizing these traditions means taking the risk of being called racist. I'm happy to take that risk because there has long been a deafening silence among human rights defenders about these issues. We've been cowed, for the most part, into accepting, publicly at least, that human values, far from being universal, can vary according to culture and religion. It's called cultural relativism, but for me, really, it's simple moral cowardice. And I believe we have to end this silence. We have to speak up about these abuses and violations loud and clearly. As I've traveled the world, I've witnessed incredible cruelty and much heartbreak. But time and again, I've been surprised, uplifted, and truly, truly inspired by the moral clarity, the moral courage of ordinary people, beacons of light in the darkness. They're people who have two things in common: an innate sense of right and wrong, and the courage to act on their convictions. They're people like Noor Marjan, who risked her life daily in Pakistan, teaching young girls to read and write. People like Manishwari and her family in India, who refused to kill their twin baby girls despite enormous pressure to do so from their community. And Flora Terra. I met Flora at a dinner party just last Saturday in Toronto. She's a Kenyan human rights activist who fled to Canada after being persecuted for fighting against harmful traditional practices, including polygamy, in her country. They killed her own son, 19-year-old John Mark Mutetia. But despite that, Flora says she will not be silenced. They can kill the dreamer, she told me, but not the dream. These are ordinary people compelled to take moral actions in immoral surroundings, sometimes at great cost to themselves. People who prove to me that fundamental human values are just that. They are fundamental and they are universal. I'm not telling you all this because I care so much about human rights issues or because I want you to care. No, I'm telling you because I want you not just to care, I want you to take action. These human rights defenders are counting on us, whatever our color or religion, to help them change their world. Just 2 weeks ago, you probably heard a young Pakistani woman was stoned outside a courthouse for marrying the man she loved. A week or so earlier, we heard about the kidnapping of 200 girls in Nigeria by a Muslim fundamentalist group who want to sell them off into marriage. These things make news when they're big events, but they happen each and every day. And the men and women committed to ending these things in the developing world, they need you to help amplify their voices and their protests. In Canada, I know there's a feeling that the war for equality has been won, and in fact, feminism seems to have gotten quite a bad rap lately. I don't really understand why. No suicide bombs have ever been launched, no wars fought, and no one killed or maimed in the name of feminism. So it seems to me that all of us, men and women, need to own that word again, to believe in feminism, a new kind of feminism that is all about the fight for girls and women everywhere around the globe. And everywhere includes Canada. Many of the things I've been talking about today are happening right here: honor killings, forced marriage, sexual slavery, and more. You're a generation of women and men who live in a truly global world, and the conclusions that I've drawn from all that I have witnessed and all that I have seen is that we can't just reap the benefits of that world. We have to take responsibility for what happens in the world. We have to embrace the idea that we're not just in this world for ourselves, our families, or even our country. we're also in this world for others, far beyond our borders. See, what matters in the end is not how much money you've made, what job titles you got, or how much power you've grabbed. What matters is whether you have been a force for good. Carleton has given you all the benefit of a fantastic education and encouraged you to be free thinkers. You now have a unique opportunity to make a difference in a way that may not yet have revealed itself. And so as you leave here today, I challenge you to make a pact with yourself, to speak up for what is right, to stand up for what is right, to look for opportunities to give voice to those who have yet to find theirs. Because you see, if we don't speak up for what is right, then we are complicit in what is wrong. I do have to warn you though, standing up won't always be easy, because if it was, everybody would be doing it. There is no moral cowardice without knowledge, no moral courage without fear. But if you trust your heart to know right from wrong, if you trust your heart to do right, not wrong, then you will be a force for good. For the last 20 years, I've wondered what happened to Leah, that little Indian baby girl adopted by the American couple after they saw our film. And last week, I made it my business to find out. I tracked the family down to North Carolina, and I spoke to Leah and her mom, and I can report that Leah Newman is much like you. She's 21 years old. She has dreams just like you. She's in her second year of university, and she's hoping to become a doctor. What a testament to the power we all have to inspire and influence change. And so I'd like to leave you today with these words. Every beach starts with a single grain of sand. Be that grain of sand. Congratulations once again, Carleton grads of 2014. Now go out there and grab the world by the Mozart balls. Thank you.